hate that. Okay. Hi, friends. How's everybody doing? We good? We good? Just nods? Cool. We're breathing. That counts. I am so grateful for everybody who's hanging out. We got 27 people in the live. Hello. Also, the book club has like 1,200 people in it or something insane like that. So oh, no worries. Yeah, you can hang out if you want to listen to the discussion. I'm going to go over some housekeeping really quick and kind of answer your question. Yeah, 1,200 members. I don't really know what to do with that. I'm grateful, but I'm scared because what do I do with that?
That's awesome.
I'm excited, but I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, if you hear somebody screaming and talking about guns and stuff, I'm not holding anybody hostage. That's my dear boyfriend playing Call of Duty. I know you may not believe me, but it's true. Oh yeah, you're fine to hang out. Thank you so much. So another thing is you guys don't have to speak. Nobody's like, I'm not forcing y'all to do anything. If you would like to give an opinion, you're totally welcome. If you just want to kind of sit here and listen, that's also cool. 3, I haven't had an issue with this, but it's book club fashion to let people know that people are going to have different opinions. If somebody says something that's different than your opinion, just listen, let it out. It's okay. Let's not get in fights. I don't know how to deal. I don't know how to handle that. Also on Zoom, there's like a hand raising option. I unfortunately don't know where that button is. So if you find it, feel free to use that. That's like the best way, unless you just like want to physically raise your hand to talk. Either way, that works too. Book club like in person is a lot easier because every single book club that I've attended in person, there's quite literally a round table. So we just go around the circle, but I don't know how to do this Zoom situation again. So physically raising hand, pressing the hand button, whatever works for y'all. Shameless plug to follow us on Instagram. I know a lot of people, somebody just put the emoji of the hand raising. I know I've gotten a lot of questions on what books we're reading next, because I don't think the book club's website has an option for like upcoming reads. There's like a TBR section, but for some reason there's not like a section of, hi Maura. There's not a section like to say this is what we're reading in April, May, and June, because I'm crazy and we've already selected those books. So Instagram's like the best place to do that, to check for updates. I always update the currently reading on the book club's site, but I don't know, for some reason there's not like an option to say like this is our plan. There might be, I haven't found it yet, but he's yelling. It immediately makes me think the tiny deaths, right? And also there's a morbidly curious. Well, we could talk about that. I'm gonna talk about that at the end. I'll talk about that at the end. Okay. So thank you for hanging out. Thank you. If I look this way, it's because I'm looking at the TikTok live. I wanted to make this book club accessible for everybody, and some people are kind of weary about joining Zooms with a bunch of strangers. I would be on TikTok. So we've got like 20 people over here who are going to be putting in their input as well. So I'll be looking back and forth. Tonight's drink of choice is the remainder of red wine. I thought I had a lot more. So I'm going to have to nurse this.
Oh, that happened.
I'm going to have to nurse this for the next hour and a half. I drank more last night than I intended to, is what happened. This week it's been great, guys. It's spring, so sugar ants are thriving. We have found them fucking everywhere. So, okay. Cheers. I would love to hear what you guys thought about the book, because I have thoughts and I don't feel like they're warranted. And I'll leave it at that. Who wants to go? I love it. Who wants to go first and tell me what they thought of the book? We always start these book clubs off. Oh my gosh, hi! I didn't even see that was you, Lydia. Oh my gosh, I love all the familiar faces. We start off always just like, okay, general questions. What did you think of the book? Did you like it? Would you read something else by this author? Would you recommend this book to somebody else? Just generic questions. And then through those generic questions, we can kind of get through the nitty gritty. I know at the end of this book, there were discussion questions, but they, to me, kind of seem
I can't hear you. I'm not sure if I'm the only one.
I wasn't able to hear her either.
Okay.
For about like 20 seconds.
Nice. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Whoever wants to go first, just general idea, like we always start the book clubs off by saying like, what did you think of the book? Just generic questions. Would you read something else by this author? Did you like it? Would you recommend other people read this if they're interested in morbidly curious stuff? Whoever wants to go first. Yes,
I'll go. I enjoyed learning about the stuff that she did for modern forensic science, but I think there were a ton of chapters that I could have done without. Personally, there were a lot of chapters where I was like, I don't need to know any of that, but I thought it was fascinating. And would I read another book by this author? Depends on what it's about. We'll see.
I think I would totally echo that there was a whole lot of her childhood that I maybe didn't necessarily need.
Yeah.
But once I got past like the pictures in the center, then the whole rest of it was really, really interesting.
I think we were having that discussion in the Discord. So I think I had just blatantly said like, she's rich, we get it. She's got money.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Basically was like the first half I didn't need. The second half, if I had more detail, I would have been so much more into it. But I didn't need to know what her childhood home looked like and what her parents, how they felt, or how many rooms were in it, or the details. I didn't need that.
Unless someone had died in it.
I feel like it almost kind of not quite like detracted from it, but also kind of like just set her up coming from like this very privileged position and then being like, so she had this amazing life and then as like early on and then did all these great things. But yeah, no, I definitely could have done more, I guess, with the later half stuff when, you know, with the dioramas and everything that she'd built up.
I feel like I get where he was trying to set it up, where that's where she had the privilege and that's where she learned certain techniques and that's where she understood certain things. But I feel like we could have done that in a chapter.
Yeah. Paragraph. Like that's how she afforded to pay people's salaries. Like every time they said she paid so-and-so's salaries, I was like, oh my God, that's
wild.
She was throwing that shit around like it was confetti.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let her go to med school there, but she could pay for other people's salaries. That's fine. And pay to like have a department built, but she couldn't go to med school.
Yeah.
I was just going to say on the flip side, I felt like I would have liked more detail in the second half of the book on like things like the fact that she had to do the dental recognition program. Like that is amazing. And like, it just kind of like mentioned it a couple of times, but it would have been cool to learn more about that and have more detail on that, because that's something that is still used today and is used like so widely. I mean, everybody uses that. So that was, you know, I felt like the pacing was just so off of that. Like he didn't put, like, would I read something else by this author? I don't know that I would, because there was no emphasis on the things that were really important. And there was so much emphasis, you know, there was like, it was a completely even throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I was shocked when I got to the other half of those pictures because I was like, oh, good, there's still like quite a bit of book left. But then when I realized that like the last however many pages are just like going over what all the different dioramas are and like all of that, I was like, oh, okay, no, there's not that much left. And I feel like we just got to like the really important bits of it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Thank God. Because I was so worried when I was reading this. I was like, oh shit. Oh no. I don't really like this. And I don't want to say I don't really like this. Hi. What do
Hard to
you?
follow up Caitlin Dowdy, right?
I know. Well, nothing is gonna top that. I wanted to love this so much. I think this is one of the first books that I picked up when I was like rekindling my love for reading a couple of years ago, and I've had it ever since. And this book club was, kind of designed to help me minimize my true crime TBR. It's not working. I love how far I've come with it, but I was wanting to read 18 Tiny Deaths for what feels like years now, and now I've read it. I'm like, well, shit. All right. I thought it was good. I mean, I still enjoyed it. I still learned a lot. And I feel like the author, yes, I liked it. I feel like the author, you are stressing me out next to that one. Okay. I feel like the author went into this maybe with a different book in mind. And then once he realized how cool Frances was, he kind of changed paths, but kept a lot of the other research that he had done. That's probably a total especially from his author's note, I don't think that was the case, but it just felt like so much was put into, similar to how Frances was treated. I feel like a lot of her was backburnered in this book, and I don't love that. I listened to the audiobook, interestingly enough. A lot of what was in the physical book, actually not a lot, there was at least 5 moments where I was reading and the audiobook narrator was like a page over. Like there was stuff either added, taken away. I don't know what the audiobook narrator was reading, but it wasn't this. There was maybe 5 parts where like a whole paragraph was just gone, and I was like, well, I'm glad I'm doing both. Some of it was like kind of important, but agreed. I did feel like when I started the audiobook, I was driving around and I was like, what am I reading the right thing? Because it's just about this family house. Like, this is cool. I dig it. I really love this kind of history, but like, I don't know why I'm learning about it. Like, this really could have been condensed. One of my favorite examples of this is somewhere later on in the book, somebody asked her if she wanted like her mother's piano, and then like the next 3 paragraphs were discussing how like beautiful and special this piano was, when he could have just said those 2 words, beautiful and special. Like, he just went on a full tangent about how amazing and rare this piano was, which is really great, but I was kind of like, oh, for goodness sake. So people are saying in the comments that they liked it, but could have been done without a major chunk of it. I totally agree. Somebody, this Spine of Motherhood, gold leaf plates, why not? I think, though, for one, I would hope that Frances would maybe be a member of this book club. I feel like she would, and I just want to plant that in my brain. Let me have that, especially with all the her love for reading and stuff like that, and how curious she was. I'm like, you know what, she would be a member. We're just gonna stick with that. She's amazing. Like, I love, and Spine of Motherhood also said she was headstrong. Like, she was relentless, and I love that. And we actually just missed her birthday. March 25th was her birthday, so happy belated. She's definitely turned into, when people ask you who's a person you would have dinner with, like dead or alive, she's like turned into like my number 1 spot, like, for sure.
She'd take you to a nice dinner too.
Yeah. You're buying, Fran.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah, right. She got the money. Throw you the what? What the fuck are you talking about? Throw you the what? Anywho, so yeah, I enjoyed it. I still wound up, I don't know if you guys do ratings, I still wound up giving it 4 stars because I think overall I still learned quite a bit. Even the parts that weren't about Frances, I was learning about other people. Like, okay, this person was kind of cool, this person had a lot to offer. But I'm so glad that I was not alone in feeling that way, because I was very nervous, you guys. I was very nervous. So Frances paid the author to write this. I love it. But I definitely agree with Mara too, that it definitely like picked up in the second half. Right, a couple people had said that. This book also made me very frustrated. I mean, I think this is like all women in this meeting right now. what the fuck? Like I was, a lot of the times I paused because I was like so angry. Like nobody would listen to her. Nobody would listen to her. And still to this day, there have not been like changes that need to have been made and progress that could have been made. She knew what needed to change and nobody seemed to care. And it was just, oh my God, it was infuriating for me to read this. And even if like she wanted things to change, people would like shoo her away and then they would either change without her getting any recognition or nothing would happen. And I'm like, this is why? And like some of the questions at the end of the book were like, why do you think this is? You know, why do you think that this never changed? Why do you think that nobody listened to her? Like, how could this have been avoided? And I was just like, I don't know, Bruce. I wish I knew because we're still trying to figure that out today in a lot of aspects. So anyway, it made me very angry. And I'm sure you guys have felt the same way at some point. Yeah, I'm just past her birthday, looking through my notes. It's rare that I gasp when I'm reading a book. It happens. But if something crazy happens, I do audibly gasp. And when I heard water damage to the dioramas,
Yes.
I about fainted because I didn't know like, you know, the status of where they are now. And I was like, oh my God, these things do not tell me these got destroyed for some damn water. And do not tell me that. And of course she did the best she can. She's like, I think he briefly mentioned that she was pretty much blind and deaf at this point, but she was still fixing these dioramas and making sure that, you know, they were still being used. One thing that was interesting was her kind of not disdain, but like her last letter about Harvard. She was really not happy with them. And they didn't really maintain her, from what I remember or gathered, they didn't really maintain her legacy very well, like at all. And I thought it was interesting that Bruce at one point said there was only one thing that she wasn't able to get, which is that Harvard degree. And I was like, I don't think she would have wanted it by that point. Yeah. She did enough. Like she did what she wanted. Did she do what she wanted? I don't know. Like, am I trying to find out where it is? Yeah, she literally, there was a Francis Glessner Lee Fund for the study of legal medicine. Page 270 was what it was. One recognition that was never granted to Lee, the one that would have held the most profound meaning for her, was an honorary degree from Harvard. I don't really agree with that.
I think maybe at the beginning of all this, she would have wanted it, but then after all of the fighting and ridiculousness that she had to put up with everyone at Harvard, I think she was fine with the recognition that she was getting from the police departments instead, and the work that she was doing with them. I think that was more fulfilling for her at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read that and I was very confused. And the next sentence, without the support of Lee, the Department of Legal Medicine at Harvard Medical School went into a death spiral. And I was like, great. Just great. I tried, since I did the audiobook, typically like I'll have like a plethora of colored tabs to kind of indicate certain things with the books, but I did the audiobook for this one, so I don't have as much. But a lot of the, which you can't even really see it, but a lot of the orange tabs are just like people pretty much stepping all over her. I'm sorry, the blue tabs, whatever there's more of is people stepping all over her. Also, the orange tabs, even today, has everything been a wrongful conviction? Because how in the world they overlooked everything all the time. Even like, of course, back in the day, like signatures could be faked and names could be changed and people wouldn't bat an eye. But even one of the last quotes that Moritz had said in a Time magazine interview in 1958, estimated at the time that as many as 5,000 homicides went undetected every year. That's not even unsolved, that's undetected every year in the United States. Quote, it is an amazing truth that in most localities of the United States, the official medical examination of unexplained deaths is so casual and an expert that clever murderers often go free. Great. I will say, I did love that because of Frances Francis's classes, a lot of cops or a lot of people in law enforcement were pointing out things that were wrong. Like, no, but I learned that in the class. Like, no, this is wrong. Why are you making me take this class if like this is wrong? I really appreciated that. Anyway, I'm glad I'm not alone in that feeling. And they changed the name of the McGrath Library. I hated that. They treated her like trash. They didn't take her seriously because no credentials. One interesting thing actually in the questions at the end here was concerning the two officers that did eventually, the two women officers that eventually did join her class. There seemed to be like a weird discussion between her and the male workers, or the male workers like, we've been trying for years to get women in law enforcement. Bullshit. Okay, first of all. Second, women like Evelyn J. Briggs and Catherine B. Haggerty, this is from the back of the book, were eventually incorporated into the forensics training program. What challenges do you think they faced as women in the primarily male environment? Discuss the ways Lee made them feel comfortable. These questions are so bizarre, but I figured I would try and incorporate some of them. Anyway, thoughts on her eventually, and eventually letting women in, or requiring at least 2 women be included. Another thing in the back, though, along with that, was Bruce pointed out that she mainly still worked with men and was like trying to dissect that. And I thought that was kind of a strange question, because I really didn't feel like she had any other choice. Like, clearly this is the way things were. Women were not supposed to do this sort of job. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that, as far as, her only working with women and then eventually like them letting women be in this thing, and compare it to like today?
Well, I think that she did realize from her position, they weren't even letting her do her job. So how were they going to let her help other women do the job they were actually trained to do, if they weren't letting her do her job and she created all of this? So how is she going to influence that? So
Right.
She may have just realized that she had more influence to create this by getting men involved, to get a footing and have it actually exist with men, versus trying to get more women involved and then it be more of what she was going through and then not exist, knowing that she wasn't going to be around forever. And if it was filled with women, the world was going to treat them exactly the way they treated her, versus fill it with men, and then when she's gone, they'll take them seriously and it will stay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just like demographic wise, her options were pretty limited. I mean, was mentioned like many times too that women weren't really expected or shouldn't have been involved in these kinds of things anyways, because it was too graphic for them. Like, they were too sensitive to be dealing with these kinds of topics, like dealing with dead bodies and such. So I think, yeah, just given the time, her options were very limited. And like Mara said, just like getting more men, like I think I really appreciated like her emphasis on like wanting more conferences and trying to keep these seminars going, so that they were always like bringing people back in to keep them updated and keeping them in the loop, because I think that was like probably like integral in terms of continuing to get these ideas flowing and continuing to push them out. But yeah, there was only 2 women, but I feel like that was typical of the time given.
Right. Yeah. And so many times in the book too, it said like she was really pushing for this to happen, like seminars, and she was really wanting this to, this dinner to happen and this meeting, and just the next sentence, this meeting never happened. And I'm like, come on. Like, she just had, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm trying to think of it too, of course, like put Francis Glessner Lee as a male in history.
Mm-hmm.
How much would have been accomplished? Or were those ideas still too radical, I guess, for the time? Like, why are we combining these departments? Why are we separating these departments? Like, what, were the ideas just crazy at the time, or was she a woman? And that's something that's kind of hard for us to answer now, of course, not knowing. Well, I guess we can kind of get an idea, but I think it's definitely important to point out that I don't feel like a lot was accomplished because she was a woman, and I don't feel bad in saying that. I don't feel bad in saying that at all. I don't know. It's it's very frustrating, and I just didn't have a good time reading this at times. I put it down more times than I can count, where I was just like, you know what, I don't feel like being sad today, I don't feel like being frustrated.
I think that aside from the being a female part, being a woman part, the other thing that I think that is heavily discounted in this world that is brought up in this book is how much value we put on the intelligence and the proof of it in a piece of paper, and that we don't allow people to be, quote, intelligent unless they have a piece of paper that they've paid for to show it. And if they've gained intelligence in any other way other than through a piece of paper at the end of whatever politically correct way of gaining intelligence, then our system, our country does not allow that person to be intelligent, does not allow them to change the system. It doesn't allow them to be a part of anything new, philanthropic even. They can't do anything or change anything or be a part of anything bigger because they didn't pay for a piece of paper. And that was a huge thing that she kept running into because she didn't have the pieces of paper, even on top of being a woman. And that's what made me cry. And honestly, I don't cry. I have a black soul, but I cried because she got all of the pieces of paper after she died.
Mm-hmm.
And if she had those pieces of paper when she was alive, she could have done everything she wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that got me.
The part that got me was her letter to
Oh yeah,
I can't remember who it was. Yeah, did she want a degree after she said Harvard has a reputation of being old fogyish and ungrateful and stupid, and I have indeed found this reputation to be deserved. Well, I don't think she wanted
to her board of directors, right? That's who she was writing to. Yeah,
I hate Harvard now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember because I mentioned it said she was writing this to the 5 or something like that, and I couldn't remember. But the parts that she was saying, this was right before she was about to die. I believe that legal medicine will take something of a slump when I die, for though I say it myself, I've had enthusiasm, willingness, courage, patience, God ever, and persistence, and believe my personality has been effective in what I have been trying to accomplish. I have been meticulous and never asking for or seeking a favor, and I conjure you to be the same. Yeah, this part got me. Please don't let things slump down and disappear. I was like, oh no. Yeah, I don't get emotional either when I'm reading, but I was like, because I knew like this is bound to it's like reading a novel. I was like, this is not gonna go well. U5, yeah, that's what it was. U5 will have to learn to go ahead, no matter how many times you are knocked down. But you men already know this far better than I have ever learned it, and then there are 5 of you to compare the bruises. I suspect that since you are mostly men, I suspect that since you are mostly men, that's a weird way to say, you may not run into some of the difficulties that I have from the very outset, but I will hereby warn you that you will find the department personnel in no way understanding of the value of meaning of the seminars. Again, she was just trying so hard to get these going. So on the topic of her being very financially stable, I think that too definitely has a factor in where she got. Do you think that's necessarily like a bad thing, or because I feel like all of her money was used for good? I don't necessarily see the wealth as like an issue, but do you think like it definitely helped get her to the status that she is now foreseen as, or get her to the status that she is now seen as?
I think 100%. I don't like, the only reason she was able to get any of this started at Harvard was because she basically funded everything herself. Yeah, because I don't even, if she hadn't had that money and had the ability to kind of afford those positions and opportunities, it's eerie to think of where this area would be without that, considering everything. Considering we still haven't really progressed that much, even like now in like terms of medical examiners and coroners and stuff. It's, yeah. I think it definitely played a big factor, but like in a good way in terms of making any like progression.
Right. I guess the question is, did it even progress anything? You know, like she got as much out there as people would let her.
It says at the end of the book that like there's still so many states that haven't even moved past what they consider like a medieval European medieval status.
Yeah.
And so many of them are still working in opposition to each other. And what kept occurring to me when it came to money is like, between Frances and her money and Hedy Lamarr and her money creating what we now know as Wi-Fi and the internet, where would this country be without those two? Like, where would the world be without those two women and their money? Like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So that's my argument from now on for feminism and money and women who make money is like Hedy Lamarr and Frances Glessner.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you guys listen to the podcast True Crime Obsessed, but they have said more times than not, like, if let women do the work. I think they have merch that just says let women do the work at this point, but yeah, if you want to get it done, just have a woman do it. Good Lord. And I don't think it kind of sucks to think that I didn't learn. I don't know how to word this properly, because ultimately I didn't feel like the book covered as much as I wanted it to about her specifically. While I still learned a lot, I still feel like there's still a lot to learn. And I'm not entirely sure on where I can get that. And I feel like this has a lot of information about her, but unfortunately I'm just like, well, maybe just like a little bit more about her and less about the rock and less about the house and everything. Like, again, at the second half really took off, and that's when I was annotating the most and getting the most out of it. But you could pretty much skip chapter 2 and chapter 4, I think it was.
I would have loved to hear more about her divorce. I feel like they didn't really talk about that much, and that was something that was like unheard of at the time. And they were like, oh yeah, she like finally left him and then did her own thing. I was like, I want to hear more about that.
And her family
Destroyed
was like siding
every
with
photo.
him.
Yeah, that's the part I hung on to. Destroyed every photo. There's no
Destroyed
photo.
every photo. There's no photos of them together.
Yeah, I was curious about that too, because yes, that was unheard of. But I don't remember. I mean, to be honest, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys. When they were talking about the rest, like her whole family, I really zoned out like more times than I want to admit. Was she religious? I don't think she was.
No. And he was, and that was a part of like the contention between them with that. It's like it kind of made me think, because it seems like he could find like a lot of information about what happened like in those early years, like when Frances was young. And I think it was mainly from like journals and stuff that he could find, but he could like glean all of these ridiculous random details from all of those. But it's like in the latter half of her life where you think there should be more records of everything, it felt like there was a lot of just like unknowns and like open-ended questions where it was just like, yeah, we don't know what happened here. We don't know what happened here. And I don't know if that's just because Frances was a private person. I mean, we saw that she destroyed all the photos of her and her ex-husband, so they couldn't find any of that. So whether she just like destroyed records, and so there's just not a lot there as much as there was able to find like about her parents and all of that. Because yeah, I found it very like shocking that there was so much available in those super early years versus like later on when there's not as much there.
Yeah, like direct quotes.
Yeah,
verbatim. I love this whole page right here about the Mona Lisa being stolen. I just flipped to that and I completely forgot about that. Also, didn't the dad like drink Coca-Cola and hate it? Like the guy who invented Coca-Cola like came in and was like wanting money, and the guy didn't like it.
Yeah, he's like $25 or part of my share. And he's like, I'll take the $25. This is garbage.
Oh my god. There's literally nothing like annotated in the front of this. I was like, I just was listening and trying to, I don't know. I never do the audiobooks for the book club, so this was the first because I just felt like I was running out of time. But even in the beginning, I was like, I feel like I'm learning a whole lot.
I was like a little bit intrigued when they were talking about like the Chicago and like the World's Fair and stuff, just because I really like the H.H. Holmes stuff. And like, I was like, ooh, we're going to get a little bit more into that. But it was, you know, a brief passing, obviously. But like Chicago during those times was very interesting. But
sure. Yeah, I was intrigued. But I definitely want, I don't even know if this is accurate, but I kind of want a whole book on just Harvard Medical at this point. Like, I feel like he did cover most of it here, but not like, I don't know, because obviously you're going to bring up Francis in doing so with that. I don't know, like it just felt like 3 different books were kind of happening at once, where like only a third of it was actually focused on who I wanted to read about. But at the same time, I would love to hear more about H.H. Holmes, and I would love to hear more about, you know, this during this period in Chicago during this period, but also, you know, Harvard Medical and how crazy of a situation that is. So I just like, I understand, but at the same time, I'm like, I always like I'm so hard on myself whenever I have qualms about a book, and I'm like, this wasn't what I wanted, but then I'm like, what did you want? You know, like what exactly were you wanting from this? So I'm just like in a blender right now trying to figure out like how to word this exactly, because what exactly did I wanted more on her, that's for sure, but I don't know. I'm glad that you guys have the same opinions on me, because that was weird.
I kind of see where you're coming from though, because like a book just about her, but then I also kind of want a book about like where they started with the history of the profession, and like a book just about the profession without any details of personal lives of any of the people, but just the profession. That would be a cool book. But then a book about the schools and the people and how like all the drama would be interesting. But then have Frances get her own, like, well, she already did, obviously, but like more in depth without all of that extra, like filter it all out and streamline it. But I really want a book about the profession front to end, because I was really interested about like the history of where the morgue came from and like all of these different professions, like where that came from. But that kind of fizzled out when they started talking about Frances and never connected again. And I really wanted that to loop back around more so, and it didn't really. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe.
Right. No, it did, because I felt like he focused more on the people that she was influenced by. Like, we were talking a lot about the people around her that she was, you know, going after to like, or sought after to like, you know, just advance, you know, studies. And it just like, who was the guy? I think it was chapter 4, McGrath. Like, I understand that he was incredibly important to Frances and like how she, but like the whole chapter about how he was was he an examiner? I think it was what it was. But it starts off with George Burgess McGrath was exasperated. As the law was written in the Commonwealth, medical examiners in Massachusetts did not have independent authority to investigate deaths. Like, I think that's fascinating, and I think that whole chapter was really fascinating, but that was like his biography and like more about him, which is cool. I want to learn about that. I want to learn about how crazy, you know, the lengths that he had to go to just to get to where he was, but that didn't feel appropriate here. I don't know. I feel so bad. And it's not that I didn't like the book. I just, you know, and not to throw shade at a book that we read like 4 months ago, but this is definitely what I wanted Education of a Coroner to be like. I don't think anybody was here for that meeting. That was a collectively disliked book. It was a good time just willing it to the ground. But this is kind of this in kind of had the whole scope of the forensics world that I was wanting in that book. But I didn't need it here. No medical school in the United States offered the training McGrath believed was necessary preparation for the responsibilities of a medical examiner. Medical students trained him in pathology, the study of diseases and abnormal conditions. But legal medicine, what would later come to be called forensic pathology, was focused on patterns of fatal injuries, poisoning, postmortem changes, and other subjects that were outside the usual teachings of medical practice. I think everybody that we said was guilty at one point in history is innocent, because I don't trust it.
Well, even like when he talked about his story and just like the few example cases where he had some that were they thought were accidental, that were murders, and then the others where they had arrested people for murder, but it was just accidental. And just to think that those are just a few select cases in a very like isolated location and situation, to think of how many hundreds and thousands others there have been and still are, just based on those, like what you would think at this point would be very like baseline things we should be able to look at and figure out and be able to draw conclusions from.
Right. Yeah, I found it interesting. I just didn't think it was super necessary at this point.
Well, and I was floored by the number 2,342 separate death investigation systems, varying statewide, some by county, some by regional. There are no federal laws or national standards about how unexplained deaths are to be investigated. And I'm with you, Lydia. Like that just seems like there should be some kind of commonality. There should be some type of procedures, like step one.
Yeah.
Right. I'm looking at the comments. Hi, Coffee Leggings. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. There's so many amazing methods and discoveries that are by women in our field. Yes, Coffee Leggings works in forensics, and I have picked her brain multiple times. I think McGrath was important because he sparked her light to do what she did for legal medicine. Absolutely. I felt like that section was trying to make movie readers with the same sense of awe and admiration that she had for McGrath. Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think it was super necessary. Not movie, not figured. I feel like it was necessary. It just felt very detailed to the point where I was like, this guy is cool and all, but where's my Francis?
I think it's just because, when it came up, we still hadn't known a lot of Francis at this point.
Right.
Like, as much as it's called the untold story of Francis, it was kind of like the untold story of Francis and everybody else. That, or like, it was very like equally split between everyone else in it. Like, if it was the untold story of like the beginnings of modern forensics or something like that, then it may have made a bit like more sense. But I do think it's just like where it came up. Obviously, he played like an integral role in terms of getting her where she like getting her brain started and wanting to continue to pursue this. But it did kind of come up in that point where we're like, we still don't even know a ton about Francis in this position right now. But now we know a ton about McGrath.
We just know she had a lot of money. That's about it.
Yeah.
Go her. I mean, nothing to her. It's just like, that's all we learned in the first couple of chapters. Somebody asked, do you recommend this book so far? I feel like I would recommend this book for sure. Asterisks.
But
yeah, maybe if he cut out the beginning and rearranged the later chapter. Yeah, I feel like this was an excellent read. I actually went through the Goodreads reviews of this. Most of the I love to do that. I'm nosy like that. I want to see what people are saying, especially before going into a meeting. And for the most part, people didn't like it because of kind of the same reasons that we're saying here, where they just felt like a lot of parts were unnecessary. But people were like, hey, I'm really interested in forensics and I learned a lot and I really enjoyed this. So I would definitely recommend this to people if they enjoyed forensics. Just know that this is I don't want to say like mislabeled. That's totally totally the wrong word, because I don't think it's mislabeled, but it's not what you think it's about in a way. Like it's going to be about forensics. It is going to be about forensics. It's going to be about this time period, but that more so than the 18 tiny deaths like it advertises. And I could be wrong about that, and I could be way too harsh on it, similar to how in our cultish discussion a couple months ago in January, people didn't love cultish as much as I thought they would, because I think going into it they were like, oh, we're going to learn about cults, but it was more so language. We were learning about language, and I don't think these are the same examples, but kind of similar to where we were like, I don't want to say promised one. I feel so bad. I don't want to say like we were promised one thing, but it wound up being another, but kind of in a way. Like I totally would recommend this. End of the discussion. Totally would recommend it. I just think you're going to get a lot of information that you maybe weren't expecting. And you might learn something from it. You might not. spot on, totally agree. A lot of context that may be or may not be relative to Frances. The poem that Frances wrote about organs but never sent. I also really wanted Frances, I know nothing to her, sorry, I don't want to speak ill of it, but I really wanted her to finish that biography. They kept mentioning that she was writing and all this, and I kind of wanted to hear more about what she had written. I feel like we got snippets of it, but maybe because of family, he couldn't get access to everything, but I was really looking forward to hearing more about what she had been writing. Totally would have read that book for sure. Anyway, we are about 45 minutes in. These vary in length. I have not read Devil in the White City. That book, I swear to God, is everywhere. Like if you walk into any thrift store in the country, you will find it. I think I have a copy. I have not read it though. I've not read it though. I need to. I feel like I'm losing a true crime card not having read Devil in the White City. It's like the book. Anyway, so if anybody has any last minute thoughts, if not, we can wrap it up and call it a night.
Yeah, I will just say I agree with you. I would recommend it. I think on the basis that like I genuinely did not know like anything about Frances going into this or anything like that. So I definitely learned from it. And it's hard. I always find it hard like rating nonfiction books and like rating true crime books like because of that balance between like you kind of know what you're getting into, but then you don't. And then because it's like a dissemination of information, it's like balancing like what you've learned versus writing styles and everything. But I would recommend it still if you're interested in that field, like to learn more about it. And yeah, it's still jarring because I've seen someone had shared like the John Oliver video about like this topic.
Was it me? No. Whatever.
He did about 2 years ago, I think. He did a quick video or section on it, and just like having watched that before I read this, and then hearing like her like describe what things were like in the 40s, and the fact that there are still states and stuff that are still using those same practices now, where like your coroner can just be a hairdresser that just is like voted in, and that's who's in charge of like going over like wrongful death stuff. Like that's terrifying. But so I think that kind of add that extra element to be like, this sounds like it's so archaic when you're like reading it, but the fact that it is very much still like that now is, 80 years later is insane.
One of the things in the author's note, oh my God, we're almost at 1,300 members now. I don't know why I checked. I shouldn't have looked. One of the things that he said, I believe it was in his author's note at least, he just ended it on the sentence, I have endeavored to the facts as much as possible. I don't know if I could ever have met Lee's exacting standards of perfection, but I hope that I have done her justice. Do you think that Bruce did her justice, did her story justice?
I had a hard time with that one because I read the author's note and I was like, well, bro, because it's supposed to be a book about her. And I felt the book was about 60% about her and 40% about other men. And for a book that was supposed to be about her, the entire profession and the entire thing that she was trying to create, she kept getting pushed out and stepped on and walked on and looked over. And in the end, even after everything she did, it still happened, even in her death. And even in her biography, he kind of managed to do the exact same thing in a book that was tributed to her in her untold story. He still kind of managed to do that to her. And that bothered me just a little bit, but I did still learn a lot more about her than I would have ever known otherwise. So there's a balance in that he needs credit for at the same time, because I would never have known about this or about her at all. But he could have eased up a little bit on the boot, just a tiny bit, and made the book about her, just a tiny bit more.
I think I said this last month, but I was kind of worried about, not to say that he didn't deserve to write this or anything, but like, his interests are his interests. And, if he wanted to write a book about it, go ahead. But I was like, kind of worried this wasn't written by a woman. And I was worried like some things, not throw shade, but I was worried that some things wouldn't transfer well or wouldn't, and so I wholeheartedly agree with you. And yes, I think you could tell that some parts were written by a man, which is exactly the issue that we had with Education of a Coroner. Except it was way worse. It was way worse. I uploaded the discussion on our YouTube page. If you want to get really mad tonight, I wouldn't suggest it, but we definitely point out the just the awful things that author had said. I don't think Bruce had any ill intention here with writing this, but I definitely agree that it just spoke volumes to what Frances had to go through and how we're learning about it in history. I took a forensics class in high school. I don't know, I would love to get a forensics degree at some point in my life, but I never heard about Frances in the forensic, and at a high school level forensics class, I don't think it would have been brought up, but it still would have been nice to learn about dioramas being used to help and aid law enforcement officers to solve crimes or better look at crime scenes. That was my favorite class in high school. I would remember if I learned about Frances. I would know. Exactly. No shade to him. I just think a woman author might have done a little bit better. There are people saying in the chat that they really enjoyed the book, for sure. Sacco and Vicente. I don't remember that. Sacco and Vicente case. We want to learn further research on that case. There were some that were unsolved and mentioned in here. Also, Boone, North Carolina was mentioned. Ew. That's the second time a little town in the mountains was mentioned. We love to see it. Anyway. I appreciate everybody for being here. This has been fun. I'm so glad I was so worried I was gonna be the only one to come in here and be like, oh, I didn't really like this one that much. So if you follow us on Instagram, I'm going to actually have a meeting with book clubs people this week. The website that we use to manage the book club, I actually have a meeting with them this week to discuss like some creator program that they have, which is super cool. But I would like to ask them about a upcoming reads section, if that's a possible thing, because that's probably the question I get asked the most is what are we reading next? Because the way the polls work, as you guys have seen in the past, if stuff is close in votes, I will just put that as the next couple of books, which is exactly what happened. So we are set until June. Next month is Hell in the Heartland. I know some people were asking that in chat. I don't know if you guys are still here, but it's hilarious. You actually can't, if I put it over here, the green screen loses it. Yeah, oh my God. So Vintage Sassy, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. I have a forensics degree and I did not know about her. Awesome. I hate that. So, okay. Next book is Hell in the Heartland by Jax Miller. I believe this is also a show or a movie. I'd have to look it up. Can you guys hear me well? It just said my internet was unstable. Okay, good. I'm gonna look that up because I would love, I don't know how the heck I could do it, but I would love to watch it with you guys after the discussion. If I create like a Discord channel or something, I don't know. We'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. This is a true crime case that I have not heard of. Forensics is still a good old boys club. Oh, God, I just sent shivers down my back. Murder, meth in the case of two missing girls. Yeah, so I don't know too much about this one. I'm very excited to learn about it. This is our April pick, and of course our May and June pick are selected as well. If you guys are interested in that, one of them is Radium Girls. This is May. This has also been staring at me on my shelf for a good couple of years, so I definitely need to get to this one. And then June is Ghosts of the Tsunami. New member here. Oh, thank you so much for joining. Ghosts of the Tsunami is about the Japan's disaster zone. This was in, oh gosh, 2011. Yeah, 2011, a powerful earthquake hit Japan. And then of course, this is when this about the ladies working in the factory, not realizing at the time that radium was dangerous. And then the lawsuits following that. This I've seen everywhere on Book Talk as of late, which is interesting. Oh, there's also a reading group guide inside. Love to see it. They're doing my job for me. I don't know these poor girls' names. Apparently I got it at Barnes & Noble. Stranger than fiction cold case from rural Oklahoma that has stumped authorities for 2 decades. Concerning, well, if they listen to Francis, considering the disappearance of 2 teenage girls and the much larger mystery of murder, a possible police cover-up, and an unimaginable truth. Oh, we're gonna get angry again next month, guys. Can't wait. Anyway, I'm trying to make sure people get to see it on TikTok, because every time I put it over here, the green screen gets rid of it. So sorry, guys. Hell in the Heartland is next. I'll make a video about it. I won't shut up about it. Don't you worry. Okay, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I do run a Morbidly Curious book club podcast. It's not necessary to listen to. It's just a little extra discussion over on my Patreon. I might be hitting some of you up later to be guests on that. More to come on that. But if you guys are interested in that, the link is in my bio, or the link is in my bio wherever you can see my bio to that. We have done a discussion of Cultish from Here to Eternity, and now we're going to do this one. And it's more so an idea, and we had an issue with this last month, but the idea for the podcast was to bring on a person who really liked the book and a person who didn't like the book, which really worked for Cultish, because it was 50-50. There were people who really didn't like it and people who did. And then from Here to Eternity, of course, everybody likes Caitlin Doughty's writing, so that just didn't work. So we just brought in people to chat about it, Julie being one of them. It was so much fun. I had a great discussion. So we're going to do that again, and that is over on my Patreon. If you would like to listen to the first episode, it is on the message board. You can click the link and you can listen for free. I had a lot of fun with it, though. It's really good. I have Nathan from Schizophrenic Reads over on there chatting about it, which I know some of my book talk people love Nathan. I love Nathan. He's great. He wants to start a book club too. We were just having a discussion about that. And he's trying to figure out what exactly to do. And so whatever he does, I'm on board. Take my money, Nathan. Whatever you have to say, I'm listening. Anyway, thank you guys so much. This discussion will be uploaded onto YouTube. Trying to think of anything else. If there's anything else to say, follow us on Instagram, and I'll post pictures throughout the reading journey each month. If I read appropriate like I'm supposed to throughout the month and not on the day of the book club, that'd be great. But I try and post pictures of the discussion or the book that we were discussing that month, just to kind of give a nice visual. Anyway, you guys are amazing. I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me. This is so cool. Truly a dream come true. I love you guys very much. And I will see you in a month.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
To discuss meth and murder. Let's do it. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you later.